I'm Bob Wendover. Casey, a young colleague of mine, complained recently that her supervisor continually makes decisions about issues he's delegated to her. Now, this includes such things as spending her budget and forgetting to tell her that he's made commitments on her time or her behalf, and then he lets her know after it's already been scheduled. Now, since this supervisor held her position immediately before being promoted, he knows it inside out. As a result, it's kind of second nature for him to simply act rather than taking the time to nurture her development. Besides, many colleagues still think of him as being in that role, so they consult him or they go to him with their issues. Being a new professional, Casey reasonably assumed that he would act in a logical manner. If he delegated a task, shouldn't he let her complete it? Unfortunately, that's not been happening in this particular case. Casey is getting an uncomfortable dose of reality about one of the vagaries of management, the boss who just doesn't let go. Now, this type of scenario is not confined to entry-level jobs, of course. It can happen at all levels. It just gets more nuanced further up inside the organization. Sadly, I've heard this story too many times. The incidence of less than consistent supervision pervades lots of organizations. As a result, we sometimes break up the spirit of enthusiastic newcomers. If this happens enough, after a while these emerging contributors develop sort of a jaded sense about supervision in general. And over time, this can become very costly if not addressed through effective management training and maybe some coaching of those new supervisors as they develop. Now, like you, I feel for Casey. We've all had to navigate at least one manager and their inconsistent ways. So here's what I suggested, and see if you agree. First of all, begin by taking a breath. Casey needs to be careful not to let her frustration overcome her perspective or overtake her perspective. No one likes to have their authority undercut or circumvented, especially when it comes to scheduling and budget, of course. But that said, this is an evolving relationship. Since her supervisor held her position just prior to being promoted, she needs to accept that there will be difficulties like this until the two of them reach an understanding about boundaries. Now, number 2, have some empathy. Since he was recently promoted from his position, or from her position, this makes him a new supervisor. Now, as much as Casey is stretching to learn her position, the supervisor is stretching to learn how to be a boss. Those new to supervision sometimes lapse back into the job that they were comfortable with. Why? Well, because it provides a sense of comfort and security, doesn't it? Unfortunately, it also gets in the way of establishing the parameters necessary for a healthy supervisory relationship. Now, if Casey is patient, much of this issue will probably subside as her boss gets busy with all his new responsibilities in dealing with others. Number 3, define the specific issues needing to be resolved. Casey will need to prioritize her concerns. She's not going to be able to fix her supervisor. These issues are best handled one at a time. If she marches into his office with a list of concerns, it will not go well. She needs to choose her battles. Which is more important right now, for instance, control over her personal schedule or control over her budget. Now, if she's observant, by the way, she can probably learn from him about how to manipulate that budget, something that she probably has little experience with up to this point. Number 4, develop an approach that is supervisor-centered. While Casey is the one with the issues, she's asking her supervisor to change his ways. This is not something easily accomplished. We're all the product of our habits and routines. She's going to have to convince him that these changes will be for his own good. It will save him time. It will reduce his heartburn. It will provide opportunities for him to establish better relationships with the other people he supervises. It will also make him look good when his boss sees that Casey is thriving in her job independently. Finally, keep your eye on the bigger picture. Now, this is the first of what will be many supervisory relationships Casey will experience. Each one is a learning experience. Patience can be in short supply among new professionals anxious to make a difference. The best leaders and decision makers discover that preparing well, Anticipating others' moves and supporting their boss's priorities is the best way to navigate organizational culture and advance their own careers. Casey can either embrace this or resist it. Hopefully, she'll embrace it. So, what do you think? Is my advice on target? What would you add? What would you modify? I and Casey would like to know. Comment on the post or email me at bobw@commonsenseenterprises.net.